Hornby's Crosti 9F, a fantastic locomotive at a railroad price. Hey guys, welcome back to Proper Chuffed. My name is Hilton and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. But that is half the fun of this, isn't it? If you're new here, I hope you enjoy this content, and if you do, please consider subscribing. If you're one of the returning viewers, welcome back guys, it's good to see you again. I'm rather excited because today I get to take my first look at Hornby's railroad range. Now this is a range that I've kind of steered clear from for the longest time because most of the other locomotives I've been picking up have been a little bit more on the premium end. However, this locomotive being a prototype of sorts has certainly piqued my interest, and it's only available in the railroad range, so great opportunity to take a look at it today. I'm quite curious because recently I did a video about sort of 00 gauge steam standards, and one of the things I pointed out was the fact that Hornby's railroad range certainly needs a lot more attention. It's a nice budget-friendly entry point for modelers, but I haven't actually seen one in person, so today will be my first. So let's dive into the Crosti 9F and take a look at how it stacks up against that more premium range of Hornby products. So here we are with Hornby's Crosti 9F in railroad range. It's worth mentioning before I start opening this all up, I bought this second hand off eBay and I have noted that there are a few things missing from this original box. Anyways, let's get into this and open it up and see what this railroad range is all about. So first things first, the box is obviously fairly rudimentary, nothing very fancy here. Basic cardboard with a foam insert on the inside. And here we have our 9F. Obviously you've got this very sort of standardized styrofoam sort of packaging with a plastic piece on the top to protect the loco and prevent it from falling out. I'm assuming there was probably some kind of plastic inside to protect the loco even further, however that is missing on my version. So no notebook, no handbook or guide to how to look after this loco, but it should be fairly easy to find online should I need to do so. So here's our 9F, and right off the bat I can say it's a fairly good looking locomotive. I'm quite impressed by the amount of detail I'm seeing here alone. But let's get into it a little bit further and take a look. Right off the bat, one thing I'm noticing is that the loco weighs a fair amount. However, the tender is incredibly light. So just taking a look at those connections there, and I can see here that the tender does not have any sort of pickup, which is very unfortunate, but I suppose expected within the railroad range as it is more budget friendly. I do think it's quite sad though, because that really does limit your sort of pickup capability on a locomotive like this, especially when heading over points. That's always an issue, right? So we'll see how it does on those. But the loco weighs a fair amount. In fact, let me get my scale and we'll just put it on there. Right, so I have my trusty kitchen scale here. Let's zero it and make sure that we're all good. And we'll put the 9F on and see how much she weighs. 429 grams. That's rather impressive actually. That's a lot heavier than I thought it would be. I suspect the tender is really adding very little value to that entire number because that is super light. Obviously full plastic tender. That's a rather impressive number. 429 grams for a 9F, that's a beastie boy. So that's quite impressive overall. Looking at the locomotive in an overview sort of style, I can see these plastic safety valves have been painted very well. The cab roof doors do not slide or move at all. However, there's a lot of detail here. Separately fitted handrails on the smoke box door too, and it looks like this pipework is separately fitted, but it doesn't seem that it is. But it is very intricate. So let's get a bit of history on the Crosti 9F and then take a closer look at this locomotive in a bit more detail. The British Railways Crosti 9F, a variant of the standard class 9F locomotives, was designed by R.A. Riddles. These locomotives were specifically developed to improve thermal efficiency and coal consumption by utilizing a preheater system. The idea behind the Crosti boiler design was to preheat the water before it entered the main boiler using waste gases from the firebox. This design was aimed at improving fuel efficiency and reducing emissions. A total of 10 9F Crostis were built between 1955 and 1956, numbered 92020 to 92029. They were constructed at the crew works of British Railways. The most distinctive feature of the Crosti was the positioning of the preheated drum below the main boiler barrel. creating a somewhat unconventional appearance. The exhaust gases would pass through this preheater before exiting via chimneys situated midway along the boiler. Initially, the Crosti 9Fs showed potential for improved efficiency. However, they encountered several operational challenges. The preheater design caused maintenance issues and complicated the cleaning process. Additionally, the mid-boiler chimney arrangement led to poor drafting, which affected the overall performance. Due to these operational difficulties, many of the Crosti 9Fs were modified. The mid-boiler chimney was often replaced with a more conventional chimney arrangement, which helped improve the drafting issues, but diminished the efficiency gains provided by the Crosti system. The experimental nature of the Crosti 9F and the subsequent challenges led to their early withdrawal. By 1967, all of the Crosti 9Fs were taken out of service and scrapped, which was relatively early compared to other members of the standard class 9F series that continued to operate until the end of steam on British Railways in 1968. Despite their operational challenges, the Crosti 9Fs remained an interesting chapter of the history of British Railways steam locomotive development. They represent the ongoing efforts to improve steam locomotive efficiency during the final years of steam power on British Railways. Unfortunately, none of the Crosti 9F locomotives were preserved. However, they are well documented in railway history, and their unique design is often discussed among railway enthusiasts and historians. The Crosti 9Fs exemplify the innovative yet sometimes problematic solutions attempted in the pursuit of more efficient steam technology during the mid-20th century. Right off the bat, I'm almost certain this was never intended to be a railroad model. The brilliant detailing on this model speaks to a tooling that was perhaps intended to be part of their more premium offering from Hornby. Numerous separately fitted parts adorn this model throughout, and it really gives off a more premium look than other models in the railroad range. The body tooling the Crosti 9F truly impresses me. It features a high number of separately fitted components and includes some metal sprung buffers and handrails throughout the boiler, on the sides and on the front of the smoke box. The detailed pipework around the firebox and side exhaust is superbly molded. This is really a whole additional part to the tooling, and it has brilliantly been replicated here. There are two variants available of the Crosti. This one comes with a smoke deflector to lift the exhaust over the cab, and it certainly is the talking point of the entire engine. The deflector alone is separately fitted and further adds more realism to the model. One of the things I love about this model is the numerous parts that on high-end models would typically be separately fitted. The plain black livery gives it a sleek look, making it difficult to discern which parts are molded and which are not. The fully glazed cab with cleverly designed spectacle plates integrated into the side window moldings is a brilliant touch. The valve gear looks absolutely brilliant, with metal turned wheels and black plastic centers. The molding on the chimney too is a brilliant bit of tooling, looking rather authentic from the original photos I've seen of the prototype. Looking inside the cab, we can see the railroad nature of this model begin to rear its head. There is no detailing here beyond the molding, and it appears a rather bland place to be for our lone fireman. The connection between the locomotive and tender is a simple drawbar, which again smacks of a cheaper offering, perhaps from Hornby's older 9F tooling. It comes as no surprise that there are no pickups on the tender then. The tender is a light and rather poor companion to the locomotive, with some rather hideous coal molding, and not much to write home about in terms of bogie detail. There is, however, a separately fitted ladder, and the rear buffers are sprung, which fits nicely with the engine. Inside, this model features an 8-pin DCC decoder mounted in the boiler barrel ahead of the motor, connected to a brass flywheel. The tender offers ample space for a speaker, and its body clips easily to the plastic chassis. I previously tried to fit HM7000 to this locomotive, and unfortunately managed to burn out my decoder when I was soldering, which is my mistake, and as a result, we unfortunately will have no symphony to this. Overall, I can't help but feel like this was a missed opportunity from Hornby for their more premium offering, though I certainly won't complain too much given it cost just over £100 secondhand on eBay. As a railroad offering, there is very little to complain about here. With a skilled, steady hand and a bit of wiring, you could certainly bring this locomotive to life as part of a premium layout and be none the wiser as to the price point. So here we are then on track with the Hornby Crosti 9F, and what a magnificent model it is. You would never guess this was a railroad model by looking at it here. Look at how the light catches all those details, and most of them are part of that mold, which is super impressive. Putting it under power, and there's really great crawl with this Crosti. I must say I did not expect this at all. Very fine motor control, perhaps not quite as fine as more modern standards, but this is really impressive if you're doing any yard work. So because this is a second-hand locomotive, I don't need to run it in at all, so we're going to head straight up the Hill of Despair and test out some inclines.
Now, for those of you joining for the first time, the Hill of Despair or Whiskey Distillery line is a 3 to 4% incline, and it's a rather good test for larger locomotives to see how they do. And as we get to the steepest point, the Crosti makes mincemeat of this. Even at a much slower speed, there's absolutely no wheel slip. This is a very strong little motor, and I'm super impressed with how it's performing so far. So let's head back down and test out some curves and points. Right, onto the curves then, and I'm picking up a bit of an issue. There seems to be a bit of a dead zone, not perhaps on my curves, but rather with the locomotive itself. It seems the pickups are not making contact at all points, and we're having a bit of a short issue. This applies too to the points, which seem to have a similar issue. Now, I think if you were to have tender pickups, you might be able to mitigate this. However, I think we have some dirty pickups here, or perhaps even wheels. So I'm going to slap it onto my tidy track cleaner, and we'll see how it performs after that. Following this, slight improvement is still losing it a little bit, but overall it's performing quite well. I think this, being a second-hand locomotive, probably has seen a couple of wars, so it perhaps needs to be opened up entirely and totally cleaned out before it will perform at its very best. Though I'm happy with it as it stands, so let's continue and hook it up to some freight and get some running in.
Is this what we should expect from Hornby's railroad range? I don't think so, as much as I'd like to hope so. The reality is there's so much detail on this locomotive, and I think that it was initially probably planned as a railway version. However, some factors may have come together to then push it down into essentially the railroad range. Don't quote me on that, I don't exactly know what the details of this locomotive or its development were, but I do feel like it was sort of aimed at the railway range, but something must have happened and dropped it back down. As an offering for the railroad range, I think it's absolutely fantastic. There is so much detail on this locomotive alone, and I really do think that with the additional extras of tender pickups, a little bit more cab detail, this really would have been a fantastic locomotive in the railway range. Still, you get what you pay for, and if you're happy to ignore those small details, you've got a really fantastic, unique locomotive here. And I would strongly recommend picking one up if you are interested in the Crosti. I think the Crosti in itself is a fantastic looking locomotive, very different to the standard 9F and really unique in many regards. So for me, this is exceptional value for money. I am very, very happy with it overall, even though it's a second-hand locomotive on my part. It does seem to have a couple little running issues, probably the pickups that are causing the major problems. Still, a very fair offering. This is really high quality, and overall I'm super impressed with it. A little bit of weathering and it's gonna look absolutely bomb. I cannot wait to do that on it. Speaking of weathering, I plan to get going on that very soon. I've picked up my airbrush and I've been doing a bit of practice. So I'm looking forward to making some weathering videos very soon. I hope you guys will join me for that. Do let me know if you've got any interest in seeing something like that. That would be great, just so I've got an idea of if that's something you want to see. This week I want to point out another YouTuber who's become fast friends with me, and that is Steve from Dinmore Junction. Steve has an increasingly large collection of locomotives that he shows off on his channel, and he really takes a lot of time and care putting his videos together. If you are interested in seeing an impressive collection of locomotives and some great running sessions, drop by Dinmore Junction and tell Steve I said hi. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As my first look at a railroad locomotive, I am super impressed overall. Again, I don't think that all of them come out quite like this. I know that they use sort of older toolings like Lima and stuff for some of their diesels, so I can't set this as the standard for railroad. This is certainly probably an exception in railroad. However, a fantastic model nonetheless. Until I see you guys next time, keep your engines fired and stay on track. All the best.